This week we're going to start to talk about social work in rural areas, and we're going to be focusing on that. You'll begin to read your book Circle of Goods, which focuses on a rural reservation community. And then you have an article related to social work in rural areas. And I also have a website PDF information related to poverty in rural areas. This program has an emphasis on rural social work, especially as it relates to indigenous communities, but most of you are currently living in very rural areas, and many of you are working in the social services field right now, and so I'm thinking you will likely be able to relate to much of what I'm going to be talking about. Please forgive me, I'm struggling with a cold right now, and this is my third attempt at recording this because of coughing fits, so I'm hoping to get through it with minimal coughing. I do want to disclose that some of this PowerPoint were taken and adapted from information from California State University, Long Beach, which is my alma mater, where I got my master's degree from. So the rural population of the United States is difficult to define, but demographic experts place the rural population between 55 million and 87 million. Excuse me. This amount nearly equals the population of France or England. And current statistics show that 16.5% of the rural population is living in poverty. So that's a very significant portion of the rural population. The website link that I have this week goes into much more depth about the demographics and challenges related to poverty in rural areas. So rural social work practice can be traced back to the Country Life Commission of 1908. It was appointed by President Theodore Roosevelt in the National Conference of Charities and Correction of the same year. Interest in rural social work waned during World War I and in the 1950s, but there was a resurgence of interest that began to develop in the late 60s as a result of the war on poverty and other work research that was going on at that time. So a rural social worker is described as a generalist who brings to bear a broad range of methodologies and skills in practice. So that's why all of the concepts we've been learning over the course of last semester and this semester can really be applied to rural social work. And the rural social worker needs to understand both the strengths and challenges of working in a small rural community. And like I said earlier, many of you are working in the social services field in rural communities, and I would venture to guess can really relate to the challenges and the strengths as I move into the next part of the slides. So some of the positive elements of rural social work practice is that in smaller communities, there tends to be more of an open communication system and more of an interagency cooperation. Systems are smaller, people are more familiar with each other. Many times people have worked together for years and years and years, or have experiences working together in other agencies. And so there is oftentimes more of that collaboration process and less bureaucracy than you'll see in larger urban areas. And additionally, there's more of a sense of community. I'm serving these people who are my clients, but I'm also serving them. They're members of my community. There can often be more of a buy-in. But some of the challenges about that are the geographic isolation. So not having access to as many resources, which is also service isolation, and personal and professional isolation. In very, very rural communities, you'll often see there'll be only, a couple of people that are in a social worker role, and they oftentimes take on many, many different roles, and there can be that professional isolation. The other challenge is related to role conflict. So when you're working in a rural community, your clients are your community members, and so oftentimes there'll be some crossover. So you might have the experience of working with somebody and then shopping in the same grocery store as them, or their child might be on your child's same sports team, or they might go to your child's school or something like that, which is not as much of an issue in larger populated areas, but is certainly an issue in rural social work practice. There are many roles of the rural social worker. There's the direct practice service role with individuals, couples, families, and groups. Rural social workers need to convey to the community the fact that social work is a valuable resources to every community member. So that idea that as we strengthen communities, it serves every member, not just the people we're working with. There's also the role of the resource specialist, and this can be one of the most challenging roles for rural social workers because of the limited resources. And it requires a lot of imagination and creativity to put together resources in order to serve the people that you're working with, because there's just often not as many resources. There's also the social service administrator and community organizers. And many rural communities have few professional people, and rural social workers usually find themselves in the role of trying to coordinate all the social services in the community. So that's kind of what I was talking about before. And the rural social worker needs to be able to relate to the power structure of the community, and programs like, the social work program that you're going through right now really tries to work on changing this. Sorry for that brief pause while I had a coughing fit. So other positive aspects of social work roles in rural communities are you often have a lot more independence. You have more opportunities for advancement a lot of times because there's just not as many pool of people. There's those tangible rewards and personal rewards. Being in a smaller community and having less people, you often get more recognition. And then there's that whole community aspect in terms of you are a member of this community, you're contributing to your community, but you feel have more of a buy-in for the community. So again, I apologize for my coughing during this presentation, but I just felt like it was really important that I get it out.